Listen to your favorite shows live and on demand 24/7. Download the 77 WABC mobile app now. This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Joining us now is a stellar guest who couldn't be more appropriate in terms of the national headlines. He's a lawyer, a former Army officer, a diplomat in the Bush administration, a U.S. hostage envoy, an ambassador, national security advisor during the Trump administration, and a diplomat during the Bush administration. Robert C. O'Brien, Ambassador, we welcome you to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. The news of this week has been incredible, and it's been a couple of days, and now we've had a chance to digest it. We have seen one of the biggest deals of hostage negotiations and exchanges between the United States, Russia, and several other countries. Releasing reporter Evan Gershkovich from the Wall Street Journal, Marine Paul Whelan. This is what you did for a long time. These hostage negotiations, I mean, they're the things that movies are made of. And I kind of felt like we were in the middle of a movie when we saw, the prisoners come off the bus, or the plane, I should say, and put on the bus. Talk to us about hostage negotiations and what the role of a negotiator like yourself would be.
Well, Judge, great to be with you, and thank you for having me on this morning. The first thing is, we're so happy for Evan and Paul and Ursula and Vladimir that they were able to get home and get out of the Russian prison system, which is a terrible place to be for anyone. And so happy to have them home, and it's great. I think you talked about kind of the Bridge of Spies situation. The Turks get some credit here. President Erdogan and his intelligence chief, Ibrahim Kalin, who we know well from the Trump administration, pulled off the kind of a nuanced stance. It's always
all right. Let me just interrupt for 1 second. Erdogan from Turkey, we're talking about.
Correct.
Interesting.
So the Turks kind of did this Bridge of Spies dance on the airport tarmac to exchange the prisoners, and those are always very nuanced. Mm-hmm. And you're never really happy about getting your folks home until they're on your plane in international airspace. And so I congratulate the Turks on getting that done and seeing the deal through. I think the Wall Street Journal did a great job, Judge, keeping Evan and his case front and center and maintaining his innocence. So I thought that was important as well. And then the last thing I'll just say is the initial takeaways. This was a big win for Vladimir Putin. I mean, obviously, it's great to get the Americans home. But Putin got a KGB colonel assassin, cold stone killer who committed a daylight murder in Germany in their equivalent of Central Park. He got him home in exchange for innocent Americans, and so he secured his support with the securocrats in Moscow, and showed that he can send folks out to the West, commit murders, and then he'll get them home by kidnapping Americans.
Yeah, and you know what? The cost of, I imagine, hostage diplomacy is increasing now because Putin, I imagine, sees that he can get, as you say, a KGB assassin back by simply kidnapping innocent Americans. But let's go back for a second, Robert O'Brien, because I think it's so important, this concept of hostage negotiations. I mean, first, how do you negotiate? Who negotiates? There are some countries like Iran, apparently, that we don't negotiate with, and we use third parties. But do we have direct negotiations with Russia?
That's a great question, Judge. And it depends. Every case is different. So for Iran, as you know, that we use, other countries, Oman has filled that role. Switzerland has filled that role when I was in office. But with Russia, we do have direct negotiations. We have diplomatic relations. We have an ambassador in Russia. I negotiated with General Patrushev when I was the Russian National Security Advisor when I was serving President Trump. So it all depends on the country. When it's a terrorist organization, we like to use military rescues if we can. and that's something that President Trump put front and center when a terrorist organization like ISIS or Al Qaeda or JNIM took American hostages. We dispatched the Navy SEALs or Delta Force to try and recover our folks. So
wow.
Every case is different, but with governments, it's a little more difficult to do the military rescue option. And so you're forced to negotiate, and some of those negotiations you can do directly with the country, like we've done that with Russia and Venezuela, and some countries like Syria or Iran, we rely on third parties to be the intermediary, and we've got some great third party partners that have done those negotiations for us.
Well, Ambassador Robert O'Brien, I mean, I'm so thrilled to have you on this Sunday morning. But when do you decide to use diplomacy as opposed to using those assets like Delta Force or the SEALs, the highly trained assets? I mean, you may have already answered that, but I mean, do you start with the military or do you start with diplomacy? And I know it's going to depend on the country, but give us a flavor of this.
So that's a very good question. When I became the hostage envoy in 2018 for President Trump, there was a document at the State Department that said, for my office, we use diplomacy first, and military is always the last resort. Mm-hmm. And I changed that. I said, it caused a lot of consternation in the State Department at the time. I said, we're going to use our military assets to rescue Americans first, and only if that isn't available, and it's too dangerous, then we'll go to diplomacy. So President Trump flipped that on its head, and that sent the message to our adversaries, both state actors and especially non-state actors, the terrorist organizations, that you can run but you can't hide. And we've got these great, exquisite resources with our special operators. They were developed to rescue hostages. That's why Delta Force came into being, and we're going to use them if we can.
Okay, so you come in and you say, I'm not happy with this, regulation, whatever you call it, and I don't want to start with diplomacy. I want to start by using our military assets. Where does that come from inside of you?
Well, look, I remember the Iran hostage crisis, and you do as well, Judge. We're old enough, unfortunately, to remember.
Yeah, yes, I am.
And that you don't look it. I do. We remember the terrible Eagle Claw operation when President Carter. Mm-hmm. And think of this: President Carter, a liberal Democrat, ordered the military to rescue our hostages. Mm-hmm. We don't have that today. I mean, who would have thought we'd be looking at the Carter years as the good old days when it comes to American, diplomacy and using our military to rescue our hostages? But I looked at that and I said, we developed these great resources and tools after they came out of that failed operation, so that it would never fail again. And let's start using them to rescue our people, because too often, if a hostage is held for too long, we saw this with ISIS. And the killing of Kayla Mueller and James Foley off the case. That we got to rescue these people first, and that's our first order of priority. And it's dangerous for the operators, for the military, but that's what they train for. And I remember going to meet with some of our forces at Fort Bragg, and they said, "Sir, put us in the game." And I know President Trump met with them on many occasions. And he said, "We want to go do our job and get Americans home." And so that became the first order of the business for us. And then, look, if that isn't a possibility, and we can't send Delta Force to downtown Moscow, unfortunately, to get people out, then we have to use diplomacy. And we've got a lot of tools there as well. We got economic sanctions. We can incentivize countries to do the right thing. And so we have to figure out all the tools of national power to bring our people home.
Well, Ambassador Robert C. O'Brien, we very much appreciate your not only being on the show, but all that you do for Americans. And, so many people like yourself, although you are obviously at the top of the pyramid here, are engaged in daily negotiations like this. And we thank you. God bless you. And we appreciate your being a part of, the efforts to bring back Americans. Thank you so much. Ambassador Robert C. O'Brien, take care.
Thank you, Judge. Great to be with you.
Thank you. All right. And never forget, that's the commitment we made on 9/11. Honor it by donating $11 a month to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation at T2T.org. That's T2T.org. And up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show, I will be speaking with the chairman and CEO of Colonial Metals Group, Paul Stone. Folks, this guy is an American patriot. He is writing a book that I think the substance of which will resonate with you as it did with me. And I look forward to having him on coming up right here on the Red Apple Audio Network.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.